Hey everybody, Brad C. here. I'm out at the farm and I'm going to do an interview on my dad. My dad was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer about 8 months ago, and he has taken the chemo, and after 6 months he's showing full remission, but he's still going to have what's called the Whipple procedure done. It's basically that's the only way to cure stage 4 pancreatic cancer, and that's to go in and remove a ton of stuff, and it's a very risky surgery and it takes 2 surgeons operating in unison, very difficult. So I wanted to come out and shoot some footage of Dad on his farm, and we're also going to do a little sit-down interview. Dad's 71 years old, but he's definitely not let cancer get the best of him, and he has fought it hard, and he's in full remission right now, so you're going to get to see him. And like I say, Dad, we can edit it. Anything out of this we need. This isn't. But Grandpa wasn't quite as good at editing back then, so what you got is pretty much what you saw.
That was what he was. What you got was what you saw is what you got.
That's for certain. Just double check it, make sure this is coming out good. Yeah, even if whatever you do, that won't matter. Okay. All right. All right, let's start off. Tell us about your education from grade school through college.
Okay, I went to a one-room grade school called Coldwater Grade School, right up the road here, and had a teacher, Betty Merritt. She taught 8 grades in one room, and kind of unusual. Now, by today's standards, you wouldn't do the things that she would do. Like for Christmas, she'd give the older boys, 7th and 8th grade boys, an axe, and they'd go up and spend the whole day climbing back through the hills to find a Christmas tree for the school for Christmas. And nowadays, if you turn kids loose and let them go a whole day with an axe back in the woods, you'd be fired. But Betty Merritt did that, and so we, anyway, I went to a one-room grade school for 7 years, and then my 8th grade year I went down to Middle Island Grade School, where they had 4 rooms. Of course, Betty had to teach every subject, all the grades, 1 through 8. And then I went to Middle Island, and then I went to Doddridge High School for 4 years, and then I went to Glenville College for 4 years. And I always hated school. And after every year at college, freshman year, sophomore year, even after my junior year, I had 1 year to go, I said, I'm not going back next year. I hated school. But I would go through the summer and had nothing else to do, so I'd go back to school. So anyway, I finished my 4 years, and I said, when I finish these 4 years and get that 4-year degree, I got my major in English and minored in social studies. I said, when I get that, I'm finished. I'm never going back to school. Well, about 2 years later, I started realizing if I got advanced degrees, I'd make more money teaching. So I said, well, I'm going back and get my AB plus 15. Went back and got the AB plus 15, gave me a little pay raise. And then I kept going taking classes. I'd go to Clarksburg or Parkersburg, and I even went to summer school in at Western University for some classes. And anyway, I went through, took a master's degree, and then you get a master's plus 15, master's plus 30, master's plus 45, and then I took more. I had about a master's plus 70 hours total. And so I guess, you know, I didn't want to go to school, but I couldn't resist going and getting higher degrees, and I wanted to be, you know, get certified to be a school administrator. So, but that was my educational career. Went through WVU, got my master's through WVU.
Now, what stopped you from becoming a doctor? I mean,
you had to do a doctoral dissertation with just a lot more. I had the hours. That's about a master's plus 70 some would be close in hours for a doctorate. But no, I had enough. By that time I was getting, you know, a little bit older, and I just didn't want to go through the extra strain and pain.
You didn't want to be Dr. Compston?
No, I didn't want to be Dr. Compston like Aaron.
Now, what about your jobs? Start with your first job that you ever had, and then just go right to retirement.
Okay, well, it might be hard to remember all that because I did a lot of different jobs, but I when I graduated from Glenville College, I couldn't find a job in Doddbridge or Gilmer counties.
Now wait, did you not work in high school?
Oh yeah, I worked when I was in high school. Oh, I thought you meant after I got out of college.
No, I mean just right from the time you was born.
Oh, well, yeah, when I was like a junior in high school, that summer before my junior year, the guy that managed the A&P store at West Union, he drove right by our house every day to work. He lived in Weston and he drove back home. And so Grandma Compson told me, said, you need to go up and flag that guy down when he goes by. He drove a little green car. And said, you need to go up and flag him down and see if he'll give you a job at the A&P store. So I went up one day and all I had on were old cut-off blue jeans with raggedy pants legs and an old T-shirt. And so I flagged him down and told him I was looking for a job. And he said, well, if you can find a tie, come in and talk to me. So I got a shirt and a tie and pants and went in and talked to him, and he put me to work at the A&P store. So, yeah, then I had been running cross country and doing track. So I quit that, and I worked for 2 years. I'd work anywhere from 20 to 28 hours a week. And I'd work of evenings after school, and Friday nights they were open until 9 o'clock, so I'd work till 9, and then Saturdays I'd work 9 hours, usually on Saturdays. And I rode with the guy from the A&P store. He'd give me a ride back home, and I'd go to school on the bus, and then go to work, and then ride back with the manager. He'd drop me off, so yeah, that was my first job. Then when I got out of high school, I worked for the city service cutting right-of-way in the summers to make money to go to college. So I paid my own way. My parents didn't have to give me a penny. And I worked in the summers, and then I worked while I was in college. I worked in the cafeteria and washed dishes and mopped floors. And while I was working at the A&P store, I bought a car, a 57 Chevy, and I didn't tell my parents I was going to buy it, but I'd save my money up at the A&P store, and the car cost $300, and it was a real pretty teal blue and white 57 Chevy, real pretty car. So I bought it down there at West Union at a car lot and drove it home. And when I drove it home, of course, my mom and dad were both upset. My mom went to crying, and Ed, you didn't buy a car. You can't buy a car. And my dad, he was, upset because I bought a car without asking him. But after he calmed down a little bit, he said, what size motor's that got in it? Has it got a 6 or an 8 cylinder? And I said, I don't know. I said, I never lifted the hood. I said, it has a good radio. That was all I cared about, was the radio. And so I bought that car, and then I bought a little Honda 50 motorcycle. And I wrecked that thing probably 50 times. I was always letting it slide down and tearing the knees out of my pants. And Mother knew when I'd wrecked again. She knew because I'd come home with my pants knees torn out where I'd wrecked that thing. But I hit cows and slid down on slick roads and had a lot of accidents with that Honda. But that's where I worked in during while I was in college. I'd work in the summer times cutting right-of-way with a scythe. And then when I got out of college, I got my first job teaching school in Front Royal, Virginia. And they really wanted your mom because they needed a librarian. And so to get her, they hired me as an English teacher at Warren Rappahannock High School. And we taught there 1 year, and then at the end of that year, I had a job offer here in Doddbridge and Gilmer. I could have gone to either place. And Pat James kind of helped me with the Gilmer County job. He knew the superintendent, and so he had me lined up with a job there. But I chose Doddbridge because that was my home county. And so I worked as a teacher for 9 years at Doddbridge High School. And then after 9 years, between that time, I'd gotten my master's, and I was certified to be a county superintendent or high school principal or anything in administration I wanted to do. I had all the certifications. And so I thought, I didn't dream that they'd ever hire me as county superintendent over the whole school system. Of because I had no experience in administration. But I thought if I put my application in for the top job, then a few years down the road when they have an assistant principal's job or a principal's job open up, they might consider me if they knew I thought I was, able to do the top job in the county. So I applied, and they had like 30 candidates for the job that year, and they narrowed it down from written applications to 5 people to personally interview. And when they narrowed it down, I thought, they'll never call me. Well, they called me and wanted me to come in for an interview. So I went in and interviewed, and there were 5 board members, and 4 of them voted for me, and 1 voted against me. And the one that voted against me was Paul Heister. He had been my cross country coach in high school, and but he thought another applicant, Ishby Caton, that was principal at West Union Grade School, had been there a long time, and he thought he was better qualified, so he didn't vote for me. But anyway, I spent that year as county superintendent, and it was tough because everybody in the county knew me because I was raised here and I taught here for 9 years, and so everybody thought they could just call me up and say, "Hey Ed, you're gonna have to do something about Joe Gum. He's just flying by my house with that bus, and he's gonna kill somebody." So then I'd have to talk to my friend, neighbor, Joe, about driving the bus. So that stressed me, and so I went through a lot of stress that year. I wasn't used to being under the pressure of a top administrative job like that, but I worked hard at it. I really worked hard at it, and at the end of the year, when it came time to renew my contract, the board voted, and they renewed my contract for another year. They voted 5-0 that time, so Paul Heister voted for me then. And they gave me a $2,000 raise, which in today's standards was almost nothing. It went from $27,000 to $29,000. And but anyway, that was what the superintendent was making back then in probably 78, 79 was about the time I was county superintendent. But anyway, they renewed my contract, and I came home and told your mom, I thought about it for a day or two, and I said, I can't stay in that job for another year, because my heart was, I was having all kinds of chest pains and muscles stretching around my heart, and I said, I'll die if I'm in that job for another year. I can't do it. So the next time the board met, I just told them I didn't want the job anymore. I was going to resign. And so I had some people call me in and ask me to reconsider. The bank president, Went Hill, and the chairman of the bank, Bud Spencer, and some people called me and wanted me to reconsider and stay with it because I guess they thought I was doing a good job. But anyway, I quit, and then I went to, and I said, I'll take a job. I don't care if it's a custodian, anything. I'll do anything, but I don't want to be superintendent anymore.
Did Mom have any problem with that, or?
No, whatever I ever wanted to do, she was always fine with. Yeah, she never complained about anything. And so then I went, and a job came open at Pennsboro High School for principal down there. So I'm down there, and I was principal down there for a couple of years. And then they closed the 2 big high schools in Ritchie County, Pennsboro and Harrisville, and consolidated into one Ritchie County High School. And then they had 2 middle schools. So they gave me a job as a principal at one of the middle schools, Cairo Middle School. And there was also an elementary school on that same grounds. So I was principal at a K through 4 elementary school. It had about 100 kids in it at Cairo. And I was also principal at the middle school and had about 300 kids in grades 5 through 8. And so I was there for 5 years. I was principal there. And then after that 5 years, a job came open here in Doddridge County for the principalship at the high school. And I applied for that and got that. So I was principal there at Doddridge High School for about 5 years. And then that's when your mom passed away in 1995. And so I finished out that year, but I'd always, I decided life was too short not to do some things I'd always wanted to do. And I'd always wanted to drive truck, and I'd always wanted to ride motorcycles out west. So I said, I'm going to finish this year out, and I'm going to do some things I've always wanted to do. So I finished out that year at the high school as principal and then resigned. And I went to truck driving school in down between Belper and Marietta High, and got my CDL, Class A CDL driver's license where I could drive a big truck. And then I went to work for a company out of Niceville, Tennessee called Star Transportation. And so I drove for them for almost 2 years. I drove the big truck with a sleeper cab on it and 53-foot trailer, which was, it's the biggest that they can put on the roads. So here I was, a little kid from West Virginia, had hardly ever been out of West Virginia, didn't know anything about big cities. And all at once I'm driving the biggest truck on the roads in Nashville, Memphis, Washington, D.C., Newark, New Jersey, Philadelphia, New York City. I drove once or twice in New York City, and that was bad. And then I drove out into Chicago. And so I drove all over the eastern part of the United States for about 2 years. And then a job came open in up in McConnellsville, Ohio, as a principal at a middle school up there. And I wasn't making much money driving truck compared to what I'd made in the school system. So then I took that job up there, and I was up there for 2 years as principal at McConnellsville Junior High School in Ohio. And then the principal job that I'd had before, when I left, that came open again. So I applied for that and got that. So I came back and spent 5 more years as principal at Doddbridge High School. Then after 5 more years as principal, there was a county job came open as director of transportation, being in charge of all the school buses and all that, and director of maintenance. And so I switched from principal's job to that. And that was a good job because I had a county vehicle, nice 4-wheel drive vehicle that I could drive home, and if I wanted to come home early and do things, I could do it. And my schedule was very flexible. But I was on call 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. No matter where I went, if there was a problem with buses or buildings or whatever, then I had to take care of it. So but anyway, I retired, and then after I retired, I went to driving truck for Jeremy Sutton, and I drove water trucks, and I drove a roll-off truck where you could haul bulldozers on it, and I'd haul bulldozers for Jeremy, and he had some old junk trucks with bad brakes, and so I had some bad experiences where I about rolled some trucks because of the bad brakes on the trucks. I had one, I was pulling up a bad hill out in the country and got up toward the top, and it didn't have low enough gear in it. So I tried to stop and put the brakes on, and the brakes wouldn't hold. So I'm just coming off that hill backwards, and what I did, just cut it over and ran in the ditch and stopped. And they had to come and pull me out of that ditch. But I had several bad, close calls with that. So anyway, I drove for Jeremy Sutton for a while, maybe a year for him, and then I quit that because I was retired. I didn't have to work. I was retired from the school system. I was just playing around. And then I had blacktop ran from the road over here to the house, and that was done by Lenny Wolf, and he had a little blacktopping company. So I liked him when he didn't. I never met him before, and I liked him. And when he was here, I said, if you ever get really hard up for a dump truck driver that's never driven a dump truck in his life, give me a call. He said, I'll call you next week. He said, I can teach you. So I went to work for Lenny, and that was the nicest guy I ever worked for. I worked for him for probably at least 2 years, and I'd drive maybe 2 or 3 days a week, just as he needed me, need an extra driver to haul rock and haul blacktop and all that. So that was my last official job, driving for Lenny, and he was a great boss.
And then you've had some little unofficial jobs like we talked about earlier. You started a satellite business.
Oh yeah, Uncle Ronnie and I, we put in satellite dishes back when that was a big deal. We put in the big 10-foot satellite dishes. We did the 4-piece dishes. They were 10 feet in diameter, and we had a funny experience one time. Uncle Ronnie had run the dish up in the air, and with those old dishes, you had to find all the satellites in the sky, and then you could run that dish down through that arc in the sky and pick up the different satellites and get different programming. And so he was in the house, And he'd run that up, and he came out to make some adjustments on the dish, and he put a little step ladder underneath the edge of the dish, and then he went back in the house to run the dish down to find some more satellites, and he forgot about that ladder being underneath there. And when he did, he ran that dish down, and it broke the dish, destroyed her dish. And of course, Uncle Ronnie was, he didn't like to do anything like that.
He doesn't make too many mistakes.
No,
like that.
Ronnie
That's more your line of
Uncle
work.
Ronnie
there.
doesn't make mistakes.
That's more your.
That's right. That's me.
Now, and then you also, you drove cars for Otto.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, I went to Joe Pyle's auto auction, and I'd go all over, and they'd take you in a van and drop you off to bring cars back to the auto auction. So I did that for a couple of years.
And then you also sold real estate.
Yeah, forgot about that. Yeah, I got my real estate license. It was a big deal. You had to take some really hard tests to get your real estate license. But I studied for that and passed the real estate exam, and so I got my real estate license, and I went to work for Larry McLean, and he was a wonderful boss. Couldn't beat Larry McLean. But I wasn't a very good salesman. I only worked for him probably 5 or 6 months. But I sold one piece of property for, it was $24,000, I think, and I made a commission maybe $1,200, and that was all I ever sold and made. I sold another one for like, it was 120-some thousand, so I would have made a good commission on that one, and I had the paperwork signed. But when they went to run the title work and everything, they found out the people that were selling it didn't have full ownership. It was a family deal, so that deal fell through with. So that was the end of my real estate business. But Larry McLean was a relative of mine. He was a good guy to work for.
Have you tried anything else that you can think of like that?
No, can't think of
Just
anything
things
else.
like
Mostly, yeah,
No.
I think that's about it.
Have you ever applied for a job and not gotten it?
Honestly, I don't remember that I have. No, I think, yeah, I can't remember applying for anything. I probably have, but I don't remember of anything. Every job I applied for, like that job in Hyatt, McConnellsville, I had an inside track with one of the board members, and he was a good friend of Uncle Ronnie and Aunt Travis, Carl Dodrell.
Oh,
And
yeah.
he was on the Board of Education up there, and so he knew the superintendent, and the superintendent serves at the will and pleasure of the board members, so the superintendent wants to keep the board members happy. So when his board member, Carl Dodrell, tells him, hey, I got a buddy down in West Virginia that needs a job, I didn't even have to, I mean, I went up for an interview, but it was already determined. I already had the job.
Wow.
Yeah.
Can't beat that.
Yeah.
All right. Tell us a story about Uncle Jim and Betty Merritt.
Oh, well, I never got in trouble in school. Matter of fact, the other kids, or Betty Merritt would always say to the other kids, why don't you be like Ed and collar in your coloring book and you know, do your work, because she had 8 grades to take care of at one time. So everybody had to keep occupied with what they were studying while she was working with other groups of students. So it was important that she, you know, be able to get kids to sit and behave. So she always bragged on me. I was Betty's favorite. And but now Uncle Jim was the opposite. He was always in trouble with Betty Merritt, because Uncle Jim was very stubborn, and you know, you couldn't hardly get him to do anything that he didn't want to do. And so he got a lot of paddlings. You know, and she had a big paddle that was about that long, and it was almost an inch thick. And Betty was just out of college, and she was very athletic. She was small and thin, but she could swing a bat, you know, as well as any boy. And so Betty was, she was pretty tough. And when she paddled you, you really knew it. I never got paddled. I never got paddled or whipped or anything. And in school or at home, other mother gave me little touchings once in a while. But anyway, Uncle Jim got paddled a lot, and he always took them. But one day he did something. He hit Patricia Nicholson, and she had spat on him, and it made him mad, and so he hit her. And so Betty said, well, Jim, I'm going to paddle you for that. And so Jim didn't think he had it coming, So when Betty paddled somebody, she'd make all the rest of the students go outside and stand just outside the school. And the schoolhouse was right beside the road. So we'd all stand out there by the flagpole and we'd be real quiet because we wanted to hear that paddle hit, and we wanted to hear the kid scream out when they got that paddle applied. So we all were real quiet, and we heard the paddle go like that. The next thing we heard was the paddle went bouncing across the floor, on the wooden floor in there. And Uncle Jim had turned around and knocked it out of her hand because he was mad. And next thing we knew, we saw the front door to the school swing open, and here came Uncle Jim, and he was real short and fat. He was probably about the 6th grade, I'd say, at that time. And he came running out the door to get away from Betty, and she came running behind him, and she just jumped right on his back, piggyback, and held right on around his neck and rode on his back, and he knocked like that and knocked her loose, and she fell off, and then he kept running and got up to the road and started down the road, and some of the bigger boys, the Plugger boys, George and Blaine, they said, "Miss Merritt, do you want us to help you with him?" And she said, "No, I can handle him." So Betty stayed with him, and she kept chasing him down the road and jump on his back and ride for a little bit. And Uncle Jim would knock her loose, and he'd run a little further. And she chased him all the way down to the school sign. There was a sign way down the road there from the school where it said "School Ahead." And she chased him all the way down there, and finally he ran out of steam. He couldn't run anymore. And he gave up and came back, and she paddled him. She went in the cloakroom and combed her hair and came back out and asked him if he was ready for round 2. But that was Uncle Jim, Betty Merritt. And he never forgot about that because later in life, I guess, she fell in love with the preacher at the church. And her husband's name was Eddie. And there was a song that came out about that time that said, I love you, Betty, but so does Eddie. And Uncle Jim loved to sing that song.
How about the story about Aaron and Garth Beck and the no-bake cookies?
Well, you boys were up in the barn playing pool, and you were wanting to get rid of Aaron. So Garth said, "Aaron, if you'll go down and make some no-bake cookies for us, I'll give you $5. So Aaron left and came down to the house, and he made the no-bake cookies, took them back up, and there were a bunch of other boys up there too.
It was me and David Jr.
David Jr. and I don't know who else. But
right.
Anyway, when Aaron took the cookies up, then everybody else grabbed the cookies and gobbled them down and ate all of them. And Garth said, "Well, I didn't get any, Aaron, so I'm not paying you." Well, Aaron was furious. And Aaron ran over and grabbed a pitchfork, and he chased Garth all around that upstairs, that barn. I mean, he was going to kill Garth if he got a hold of him.
Oh, I remember. Garth was not used to how me and Dave ate the no-bake cookies. Once they got thrown down, we would just each grab and just pull in as hard as we could, as much as we could,
Yeah.
and just started gobbling them. So Garth just kind of stood there in bewilderment, and all of a sudden they were gone.
Yeah,
But that pitchfork, Aaron dipped it in manure.
Oh, really?
Because he wanted to stick him with it, but he couldn't catch him, so he dipped it into manure, and then that way he at least could sling that manure on Garth. Yeah, he was furious.
Well, I knew Aaron was mad. He had every right to be.
Okay, we've already talked about the school system. What's been some of your proudest accomplishments?
Probably one thing that I brag on and tell a lot of people is that probably I bet there's not one in 100,000 parents that can say that they've raised 3 boys to be up in their mid-40s, and from the time they're old enough to talk, and they're 2 or 3 years old, that I've never heard a vulgar word or a swear word or a word of disrespect. So if there's, that's probably the greatest accomplishment.
What's your fondest memory of coming home from work every evening?
Well, you know, at work, a lot of people were mad at you. You know, your students in your class maybe weren't happy with you. They didn't like how you corrected them, or if I was principal and had to discipline teachers or something like that, you know, they wouldn't be happy with me. So a lot of times at work, you faced a lot of dislike or a lot of stress. When I came home, I had 3 boys that wanted to hang on to me.
Oh yeah.
So that's a fond memory.
Yeah, we all wanted to be like Dad. Now, what's the little boys?
That's a funny one. Yeah, we always called Aaron and Jared the little boys, even though now, you know, Aaron's 6'5" and Jared's probably 6'3", and Brad's 5'11". But at one time he was quite a bit bigger and older than Aaron and Jared, so we always talked about Brad and the little boys. So that was how we described Aaron and Jared.
Oh, I remember. You'd be like, "Are the little boys coming?"
Yeah.
But pretty soon it got to the point where it was kind of ridiculous, but they still called them that.
They were bigger.
Yeah, they were much bigger than me. Give us some examples of what a great coon dog Kentucky was.
Oh, well, he was a mountain cur.
What got you into coon hunting, first of all?
Oh, I started coon hunting when I was in college. I lived over at Glenville, out at Normantown with my Aunt Maud and Uncle Everett.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of the people out there were coon hunters. So I just got started coon hunting with Hill James and Pap James. He had a Norwegian elk hound that would tree raccoons. So I got started coon hunting over there with them, and then the rest of my life I love to coon hunt. I've always had coon dogs up until the last few years when my knees won't let me climb up and down the hills very well now. But I used to dream of being able to coon hunt all night and sleep all day. That was something I wanted to do. But
now, didn't Grandpa have a champion coon dog, Chief Logan?
He had Chief Logan. Yeah, Chief Logan. We entered him in a coon hunt, and they gave away trophies for the top 10 dogs in the hunt. There were about, I'd say, 60 or 70 dogs in the hunt. And you take 4 dogs out in a group, and they compete against one another to see which one can tree the most coons and all that. So there's a complicated method of keeping track of points that they earn while they're out in competition. And he had a dog that he took and entered in competition one time. And they gave away 10 big trophies. I mean, they were big trophies, first place through 10. And he won 10th place with Chief Logan. And but actually, the dogs get minus points if they would like bark, and the owner would say, "Strike my dog," because he was supposed to be on a coon track. Or if they'd start barking, he'd say, "Tree my dog," if he thought it was barking up a tree. But if you were wrong and your dog started barking on a track and you said, "Strike my dog," and then the dog turned around and came back, he was not running the track anymore, so you'd get minus points. So it's easy to get minus points. And Chief Logan did nothing wrong. He just stood beside you the whole time. He didn't get out and hunt. He didn't tree. All he did was just walk along beside the hunter. So he didn't get any minus points. But he didn't get any plus points. But all the other dogs in the hunt, they got minus points. So he ended up winning a trophy just because all he did was stood beside you.
He was proud of that too.
Yeah.
I mean, that was always on his mantle.
Oh yeah, he loved that big trophy he got with Chief Logan. But no, Kentucky, I've kept everything. I've had black and tans and blue ticks and walkers, and but usually I've kept mountain curs. And Kentucky was the best that we ever had. You know, you and Aaron and Jared and all the other young men around here coon hunted Kentucky for several years. And there are just so many stories to tell about Kentucky. He was over here one time on the hill, and he had 3 different trees that he'd run from one tree to the next. He had 3 raccoons up. They were spread out, but he had 3 trees and 3 coons, and he'd just run from one to the other. He was so smart, you know. And then there was another time we turned him loose. We'd road hunt turn him loose and let him run in front of the truck. And he'd run down the road, and if he'd smell a coon somewhere, he'd take off and go tree it. And then you get off and you go get the coon. And one time we stopped up here at Brooks Gums and turned him loose, and we heard him barking, and I thought he was treed. And we started to get out of the truck, but then he quit barking. And what he was actually doing was killing a coon. He caught one on the ground and killed it. And then we heard him barking treed, and he got after another one at the same time and took it over and put it up a tree. He was barking on that tree, and we went to get out of the truck. I don't know if it was you or Jared or who.
Me, I stepped on it.
On that side of the truck. Yeah, when you got out of the truck, you stepped on that raccoon. He'd killed one, carried it to us and laid it down beside the truck, and then took off after the other one and treed it. I mean, that's two of Kentucky's escapades. And another time, some guys saw a raccoon up here in the hollow, back in the head of the hollow, back in the woods. They saw it in the daytime up in a tree. They came down and told me. So I took Kentucky up just to see how, if he would find that raccoon. It was already up in a tree with no track to follow. And I took him up there, and he was way off through the woods from that raccoon. And I could see the raccoon. It was daytime. I could see it way out there in the tree. But Kentucky just took off as fast as he'd run, just like a beeline, straight to that tree. And we got to the tree, instead of standing up and barking instantly, he ran around and smelled all around that tree to make sure that coon hadn't gone up and come down and gone somewhere else. And then once he'd gone around and checked the raccoon still in the tree, he stood up on the tree and went to barking. But that was Kentucky, and he was a hard dog to lose.
Oh, he was legendary.
Yeah.
I mean, it was you'd never see a dog kill a coon or get a hold of a coon and then even think to leave it and go and tree another coon. That's
right.
Just, you have to just drag a coon away from a dog.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, if they get one, they won't hardly let it go. Yeah, Kentucky was one of a kind.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely.
Now, where is he buried at?
When he started treeing, normally a coon dog, if they'll start treeing by 6 or 8 months, that's very young for a blue tick or a walker. Most dogs, 6 months is really young to start treeing a coon. And Kentucky started when he was 3 months old, and when he was like 2.5 months old, David Duquette and Jared, maybe you, some of the boys were up in the hollow and got a coon with another dog and brought it down here. We were keeping Kentucky in the house at that time. And they brought that dog right out, that coon outside here on the four-wheeler, and Kentucky was here in the house. And he went crazy, barking and jumping against the window here, trying to get out to that raccoon. I mean, it was dead, and it wasn't even moving. But something about him, he wanted that raccoon so bad. And so we took that raccoon and dragged it around the house and pulled it up in a tree out here in the corner. And he chased that coon around and got up and barked on that tree. So he was about 2.5 months old then. So when he was about 3 months old, I took him up the hollow one night coon hunting. And I never dreamed he'd actually tree a coon. He was just a little tiny pup at that time. But he treed up here right where he's buried. And that's why I buried him there, because he treed on a big tree.
Wow, that's amazing. Did he kill the coon? Did you shoot it out?
I shot it out, but I shot it out where it was pretty dead. He was too small to kill a coon.
I was going to say.
But yeah, I shot that coon out. That was his first coon.
Oh my goodness.
And so that's where I buried him, right up there where that big old tree is. There's a stump there now. And I buried him right there.
Yeah. And he was actually, like most coon dogs or hounds, you don't teach them to do things like Kentucky did. I taught Kentucky to sit, shake, speak, jump through hoops.
Yeah, I remember that.
He could sit and then stay, and he'd walk around the house, and then he'd come to you. Mm-hmm. Whatever you want to teach him.
Yeah, he was smart.
Literally. I mean, he was just like a circus dog. but as like good as he was at that, no one really even remembers that because he was so legendary. Yeah. He lived for hunting coons. I mean, he would literally, I remember the balls of his feet would be raw if you let him, because he would literally just run nonstop.
Yeah.
I mean,
he was as good a coon dog as I was ever out with.
Oh, yeah. Okay. What kind of a horseman was Grandpa Compson? We talked a little bit about this.
Yeah. Well, Grandpa Compson was the best. I mean, he worked horses all his life. He had sawmills, and he would timber and pull the logs off the hill with horses. And but he would take horses that other people couldn't handle. They couldn't ride. They'd buck them off, and he would ride them and break them. I mean, he didn't charge very much, but that's kind of how he made a living, was breaking horses. But he was good. He was as good a horseman as I've ever seen.
And he knew every trick in the book, too.
Oh yeah, he had a horse that he named him Bento. It was a real pretty riding horse, Arabian, real black, beautiful horse. And this guy couldn't ride him. He'd rear up and he'd just rear up and fall over and backwards when you try to get in the saddle, and he'd fall right over backwards and kill you if you didn't get all the way. And so Grandpa Compson took him to break, and the way he broke him was when he put his foot in the saddle, he had a big ball bat, and so he put his foot in the stirrup to swing up on the horse, and just as soon as you'd swing on that horse's back, he would rear right up and fall over backwards. And of course you couldn't hang on when that happened. So just as soon as Pap Compson stepped in the stirrup and swung up in the saddle, and as soon as he hit the saddle, the horse's head started up, and Grandpa Compson had that ball bat, and he hit him right between the ears, right on top of the head, and knocked him cold as a wedge. I thought he was going to die. I was there. And the horse laid there for a minute, 2, 3 minutes, and only laid there on the ground. And then just started shaking all over. And when he got back to his feet, Grandpa Compson was already in the saddle and had that ball bat ready, and the horse didn't rear up then. But he carried that ball bat with him and rode him, and eventually, but now that horse damaged Grandpa. I don't remember how he caught him, but he caught his finger and bent one of Grandpa's fingers. And the horse's name was Bento. And Grandpa Compson said his name should have been Bent Finger instead of Bento. But he broke him. He broke him. He broke work horses, riding horses. He knew how to get the gaits out of them, to get the pacing gaits or the single foot or whatever he wanted to get. He could train a horse.
Now, when you took over, though, your style is more of a gentling,
Yeah.
than the breaking. I mean, you
No,
still use.
I don't get that rough. Yeah, I've used the running W rope trick to throw him, but no, I'm not as rough on him. He'd kick him and whatever he needed to do to show him he was boss.
Right.
He was pretty rough.
He was a rough character.
Yeah. No, I'd take a little bit easier with him.
I'm sure you remember how he used to keep his dogs from running deer.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah, he was rough.
All right. What kind of a woman was Grandma Compson?
Oh, well, Grandma Compson was just number one. There was nobody like her. Her door was always open. Grandpa Compson would drag fox hunters in and their wives and children, and they'd come in the house up there, and Mother would scurry around and have them something to eat. And if I'd come in at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, she'd hop out of bed, and next thing I knew, I'd have 2 big scrambled egg sandwiches on homemade bread, ready to eat. Grandma Compson was just, everybody loved her. She didn't work in public works, but everybody thought, there was nobody like Grandma Compson. She was just a wonderful woman, and a good leader for her family.
I've heard you say she was probably the most influential person you'd ever
Yeah.
been around, and you've been a superintendent and all kinds of
Yeah.
rubbed shoulders with some bigwigs, but
Yeah.
Grandma, more people listened to her.
Yeah. She didn't.
She get 150 Christmas cards.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nobody gets that.
Yeah. She was one of those people that didn't have an enemy in the world, and everybody loved her. But she was a giving person.
Yeah, she'd always you always want to sit in the back seat of a car.
Right. Yeah. She'd make you sit in the front, and if there were, not enough pieces of apple pie to go around, she'd make everybody else eat, and she'd do without. And of course, I'd try to stay home when Daddy would go to town, and he'd say, "Who wants to go?" Travis and Jim and Dave, they'd want to get in the car and go, or Travis and Jim were older and going maybe, and Dave didn't want to go, but I'd stay home with Mother because I knew she'd have some kind of special treat for me if I stayed home with her.
I remember when you were truck driving and you were going, I think it was your first 2 weeks of training or something. I was with Grandma, and she was terrified that you were going to come back in and not stop by the house after you've been going for like 2 or 3 weeks. I don't know what.
Yeah.
As long as she'd ever, she claimed she'd ever been without you for a long time or whatever. So, anyways, she was real conservative on the lights. You know, she always wanted to just to have the light on that she was in the room with.
Yeah.
And all the other lights she'd have them out. You know, but it was 2 a.m. and Grandma made me turn every single light in that house on. Because she said when Ed drives by, I don't want him to say, "Oh, you wasn't up," you know. Every light's going to be on.
Yeah. Yeah, she was.
She definitely loved her kids
Yeah,
and
she
grandkids.
did. Oh, yeah,
obviously.
she loved her kids and grandkids, and they all loved her.
Now, what was the dream you had about Grandma Compston?
It was a few months after she died, and I just saw her stand at the foot of my bed, and she was just waving, like I'm okay.
And she's wearing that white slip.
Yeah, I think she was. That's what she wore a lot. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was like she appeared to me in a vision a few months after she died.
I don't think there's too much question about where she was at anyways, but
Yeah. That's right.
what kind of a relationship did you have with Grandpa James?
Oh, I had the best. He was as good as a father, and I was the son he'd never had.
Oh yeah, you guys
He'd
were
always brag on me, and
thick as thieves.
yeah, he'd say when Ed drives the car, he never hits a bump, never hits a hole in the road on my side of the car. So Grandpa James and I were real close, very close.
Oh yeah, yeah. Me and Mercy's dad are real close too, but
Mm-hmm.
nobody. I've always said I don't think anybody would be closer than just both of you guys had complete
Yeah.
respect for each other. You both were just
Yeah, yeah.
perfect
Thought the
combination.
world of Clayville.
Tell a story about Grandma Compston's father, Grandpa Clark Nicholson, when he was called to pray on in church.
Yeah. Well, he attended Indian Fork Church up here, Grandpa Clark did. That was my mother's dad. And he was a real soft-spoken guy. And whenever you'd ask Grandpa Clark a question, he would wait for several seconds before he would respond, because he wanted to formulate his thoughts and just, say exactly what he wanted to say. He was real soft-spoken and everything. I remember him well and have fond memories of him. But anyway, he attended Indian Fork Church, and I guess he was not having a good relationship with one of the other men in the church. They'd been arguing about something, and they were mad at one another. So the other guy was leading the service, and Grandpa Clark was sitting back in the audience, and the other guy was leading the service, and so he called on Grandpa Clark to pray. He said, "Clark, would you lead us in prayer?" Grandpa Clark just sat there. Stone silence for a long time. Everybody was waiting on Grandpa Clark to pray, and he didn't say a word. Finally, that guy said, "Clark, I called on you to pray." Grandpa Clark said, "I heard you the first time."
Tell a story about Aaron kicking the hole in the drywall. I don't remember that.
Oh yeah, it was in here in the bathroom, and it was right on the wall there where the toilet paper hangs, and it's got his heel print, had his heel print there, and he had been saving money. You boys all saved your own money, so Aaron had been stashing his money somewhere. He had like $100 or something in his stash, and it came up missing, and he was sure that you or Jared had taken his money, and he couldn't get anybody to admit or who had done it, So he was furious over that. And so he came flying down the steps and ran in the bathroom because he was just livid. And he went in there and just took his foot and kicked the wall because he was mad, and it just punched a hole right in the drywall, and so I left that hole for years. I could have, puttied that over, plastered it over, and painted it over, and you'd never known it. But I left that for years as a reminder to Aaron not to lose his temper. And since then, Aaron's done some drywall repair for me, so I guess he paid me back for what little damage he did.
Aaron was the orderist. I shouldn't say the orderist. He was the most stubborn of us boys, I would say.
Yeah.
No question there. You see where Brady gets it from. Tell us about working 2 jobs for a while to support your family.
Well, when you boys were little, I don't know that Aaron and Jared were even born yet. It was probably when you were young. I would say Aaron and Jared weren't born. And your mom didn't work, and we were a little bit tight financially. So for, just 4 or 5 months, maybe 6 months, something like that, I worked at Salem at a glass factory. I was a night foreman. We made glass, we painted glass and all that. And so they hired me as night foreman up there. So I'd work at the school during the day from like 8 o'clock to 3:30, and school would be out 3:30, and by 4 o'clock I'd be up at Salem. Took half an hour to drive up there. So I'd go straight from school to Salem and work at Harvey's Harglow in the glass factory until 11 o'clock at night. I'd work from 4 o'clock to 11 o'clock, and then that's when we closed down the glass factory. It just went to 11 o'clock. And then I'd come home, get home about midnight, and have to get up the next morning about 6 o'clock and get showered and get ready to go to school and be ready to go to work the next day. So that's where I worked there for, I'd say maybe 6 months. And it was kind of tough, to work during the day and then go to work and work till get home at midnight. I'd get 5 or 6 hours sleep. Of course, I had animals on the farm and had to take care of them too. But that was the time period when the collie dog bit you. Your mom called me and she said that you'd been bitten by this dog, and she had you over. Of course, you remember the story. She had you over at Aunt Yvonne and Uncle Charles Cunningham's. That was Kathy's aunt and uncle. And you were out in the yard playing, and you were probably 3, I'd say 3 years old, something like that. And you were out in the yard playing, and you just patted that dog on the back. It was a collie, and it turned on you and started chewing on your face. And it just literally chewed your face to pieces. And your mom came running off the porch and dived on top of you and covered you, and the dog was chewing on her. And Charles and Yvonne came and got the dog off. But she called me. I was working over at the glass factory that night. And of course, I left there and flew over, and she took you into the hospital at Weston, and they put a bunch of stitches in. I don't remember how many stitches, but I remember I slept with you that night in the bed.
Yeah, I don't remember the actual attack. I just remember people telling the story about it.
Yeah.
I don't remember it at all.
Yeah. Of course, Uncle Charles and Aunt Yvonne were really good people.
Oh, yeah.
And, but I told your mom, I said, unless they get rid of that dog, we'll never go back. And it was their family pet. I mean, it was like Kentucky. I'm sure they were attached to that dog, but they got rid of it.
Yeah.
They gave it to somebody. They didn't kill it or anything. They gave it to somebody, I think.
Did you think I was going to die on that one?
Well, I knew you were hurt bad. It was scary. It was
Yeah.
scary. You were chewed up pretty badly.
Yeah. And luckily that turned out pretty good looking.
Yeah, didn't hurt your looks a bit.
Tell us about the time you bought Aaron his favorite candy bar.
Well, Aaron didn't like to, lose an argument, and so we were going. I think we were going to Morgantown or something. We stopped at a gas station somewhere around Fairmont area, and it was me and you and the little boys and your mom. And so I went in this gas station, and you and Jared said, "I'll bet Dad's going to get us a candy bar when he's in there." and they said, Aaron, he'll get you your Reese cup or whatever candy bar Aaron was his favorite. I forget now what it was, but you guys told Aaron that I would get him his favorite candy bar, and he said no, he won't. And so when I came back out, I did have Aaron's favorite candy bar, and so I handed him his favorite candy bar, and I'd think, oh, he'd be tickled to death to see his candy bar. As soon as he saw it, he went to crying. Because he didn't want to be wrong.
Word man, me be right. Was Jared a good sport when he lost a game as a little boy? Tell
No.
about Jared's sports dog. That was a joke.
Yeah, the boxer dog. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, no, Jared was a terrible sport. He could not stand to lose, and he didn't care if you threw the game intentionally, and he knew you threw it intentionally. He was just happy to win. That's all he cared about was winning. And he had a joke that he liked to tell when he was just little, 3 or 4 years old. But he'd tell this joke, and he'd say, "What's a sports dog?" And the answer was boxer. The boxer was a sports dog. He'd say, "What's a sports dog?" And if you'd say boxer, he'd get very mad because he didn't want you to guess it, you know. And he'd say, "No, it's not a boxer." And yeah, Jared was very competitive. He did not want to lose. Like when he got a little bit older, and you and Aaron, Jared and I would go play tennis somewhere, I wanted to be on your team or Aaron's, particularly your team, because I couldn't keep up with you boys real well playing tennis. We played doubles. You know, I'd be on a team with somebody, and if I was on a team with Jared, and I'd let a ball get by, I mean, he was all over me. "Dad, you could have got that." And you'd say, when I was playing on your team, you'd say, "Don't worry about it, Dad, you'll get the next one." Aaron was kind of in between. He was pretty competitive, but not as much as Jared. Jared never liked to lose.
No, Jared, he's definitely. And when he did lose, he usually would try to destroy something. He'd kick the ball.
Yeah, he'd kick the ball or throw the ball way off in the distance.
Aaron, I could beat him 1,000 times. He'd just keep coming right back.
Yeah.
But Jared, you beat him once, and he's furious.
Oh yeah. Yeah, Jared was a bad loser.
How did you meet Mom?
Well, when I was going to college, I stayed for 2 years in Glenville, and then at the end of my sophomore year, I went out and
Okay, sorry. How did you meet Mom?
yeah, I went out to after my sophomore year. I had an aunt that lived out in Normantown, up the hollow, and it was actually my mother's great uncle, Uncle Everett, and so they let me live with them and didn't charge me anything for room or board for 2 years. So that was one thing that helped me through college without ending up with any debt. And but anyway, I stayed with my Uncle Everett and Aunt Maud, and he had married Aunt Maud when she was older, like 50 years old. And she had a niece named Kathy, and Kathy was 4 years older than me, and so she had graduated from college before I did, and she was already working. At that time, she was working in Lewis County as a librarian, traveling around to the schools and setting up libraries in all the little schools around the county. And so Aunt Maud would talk about her niece, Kathy, and just from Aunt Maud's tone of voice, I knew that she was special. So that's how I met her. Aunt Maud kept talking about this girl named Kathy, and I knew there was something special about her. And so I guess, you know, one weekend she came home from working at Lewis County as a librarian, came home and came up to visit Aunt Maud, and I was there, and Tommy Daniels, there was another guy that I'd roomed with in Glenville, Tommy Daniels, so he went out there and stayed with me and Uncle Everett and Aunt Maud. And so Kathy and her first cousin, Yuda James, they came around to visit, and we had popcorn. I think the first time we met, we had popcorn there, and so I just met her like that, and we just were friends for probably a year or longer. And whenever she'd come in, she'd come up and visit Aunt Maud, and of course, you know, she and Tommy and Yuda and I would all four get out and go for walks and talk, and So, but after about a year, we kind of paired off, and your mom and I started kind of, I guess, what you'd call dating. We never really went anywhere. We just sit around and talk. But yeah, that's how I met her through. That was her aunt. Aunt Maud was her aunt, and Uncle Everett was my uncle through my mother's side. So we weren't related by blood, but we both had relatives there. And that's how I met her.
Now, did you know that she was when did you know you was going to actually marry her, and how did you propose?
I probably knew it just from listening to Aunt Maud talk about her.
Yeah,
Or ever met her.
but then when you met her, who made the first move? In
I
other
have
words,
no idea.
to say that that you
No.
had feelings.
I don't remember. I don't remember. It was just like we were just together, and we just kind of gradually everything developed to where. But I don't remember ever proposing or anything like that. And I did ask her dad, if it was okay to marry her, and of course he said, just take good care of her. But no, I don't remember how it developed. And it was funny because the four of us, Tommy Daniels and Yuda, her cousin, and Kathy and I, we were all just a foursome for quite a while. And then Kathy and I kind of paired off, and Tommy was a year ahead of me, so I think he graduated and went on, so he wasn't there. And then, but he and Yuda had never even held hands or talked about anything at all. And after he left, he sent Yuda a letter after Kathy and I had married. He sent Yuda a letter and asked her to marry him. He proposed through the mail. And he married Yuda, and they've got 2 kids, and as far as I know, they're happily married.
Yeah. Now, and then where were you married at?
We were married down here at the Union Mission Church, and the dress that Kathy wore was made by my Aunt Mary. It was kind of a green dress, full dress, and Aunt Mary made it by hand. And Uncle Marsh, my dad's brother, Uncle Marshall Cumpston, was the pastor that married us. And the only 2 people there were Grandpa Cumpston and Grandma Cumpston. Clayville and Margie didn't come over. I don't know whether it was because Clayville just couldn't stand to see his daughter get married, or, I mean, he wanted me, but he
Right.
still kind of hated to lose his daughter.
Right.
So I don't know why they didn't come, but it was just me and Grandma and Grandpa Cumpston and your mom.
Did you and Mom fight a lot?
Never. That's the amazing thing. I mean, we were married for 25 years, and nobody believes it. Just like me saying that I raised 3 boys that never heard a bad word out of one of them. Nobody believes that. They say, no, you're not going to raise 3 boys and not have bad language and disrespectful language to adults or anything. They say that's not true, but it is true. And the same thing is true. People say, no, you didn't live together with a woman for 25 years and never have an argument. But we didn't.
I never saw you guys argue,
No.
that's for
No,
certain.
the only thing, if I came in with muddy boots, she might say, Ed, get those muddy boots off.
Right.
But
no.
as far as ever any argument over anything, we lived together for 25 years, and it was nothing but total peace and harmony.
No, Mom, you or Mom never said a cruel word to each other or us boys. I mean, I don't ever remember that. Like, you might scold, but you weren't going to try to tear down.
Yeah.
Mom never did that. She
No.
never said a mean word.
No,
She
no,
would say,
she was pretty soft because, like, when she was teaching school, her first year she taught at Troy school in Gilmer County. She taught. She wasn't a librarian, so she was teaching, and I knew she had a geography class she taught, and she had these boys that were big 8th grade boys, and she was just fresh out of college, and she wasn't very big. These boys were pretty much to run over her because she was so easy and soft and everything. And so one of them he'd rip the pages out of his book whenever she'd say, okay, turn to page 79 in your geography book. He'd say, Miss James, I don't have that page in my book. And he'd just ripped it out. So she finally decided she was going to have to paddle one of these boys, because that was back in the days when teachers paddled kids. So she decided she was going to have to paddle one of those boys because he was just so mean. So she took him down to the office to paddle him, and she'd never done it before. She didn't know how to do it. So she told him to bend over, and she got the paddle, and she drew back, and she gave him a little tap because she was afraid she'd hurt him. She gave him a little tap, and he straightened up and he said, "Oh, come on now, Miss James. You can do better than that." But that was your mom. She was
Oh yeah.
not going to hurt somebody.
No, she pretty tender-hearted.
Mm-hmm.
She could. I remember she couldn't read poetry or the Bible without crying.
Yeah.
She'd always tear up. What stands out most in your mind about your relationship with Mom?
Well, probably just the fact that we had such a peaceful marriage. That's the biggest thing. And she went through a lot of illness, as you know. She had 4.5 years of terrible illness at the end there. She had been perfectly healthy, and then all at once she was diagnosed with that disease called TTP, thrombotic thrombosis purpura. It's called TTP. And what that does is the platelets in your body start clumping together. So 2 individual platelets stick together, and then those 2 hook up with another 2, and that becomes 4. And if it progresses too far, it just stops all the blood in your body and you die. So she was pretty far along with that before they ever discovered what it was. And it shut off the blood supplies to her kidneys, so that's why she had to have kidney dialysis for the last 4.5 years of her life, because it shut off all the blood flow to her kidneys and they died. And it shut off a lot of the blood to her brain, so after that she was a little bit, her mind was good, she was just as smart as ever, but she was a little bit slow to speak and stuff like that because of her mind, and she had epileptic seizures. And so, yeah, she went through 4.5 years of really tough times, and probably spent, of that 4.5 years, probably 2 years in the hospitals. She'd be in there for 2 or 3 weeks at a time sometimes.
She never complained, though.
No, she never complained.
I mean, not much.
No,
It's not
no,
around,
she didn't complain.
not around us, at least.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we're gonna go back to some of your 9 lives. What about when you flipped the side by side over here? And
Yeah.
you rolled it. You didn't
Yeah.
have your seatbelt on either.
Yeah, I didn't have a seatbelt on. I was out here on the bank, and I was driving along the side, and it was real tall grass, and I couldn't see how steep the ground was, and I didn't realize, went around there so far it got too steep, and the thing just started tipping up, and it just fell over on its side and flopped over. And of course I fell inside, it threw me all around, and I was banging my head on everything, and I was able to open the door on the top part, it was sticking up, and climb out and got out of it. And so then it was sitting on the side out here on the hill. So I came back and got the tractor, and my plan was to get below it. No, my plan was to get above it and tip it back over and get it back on its wheels. And I went out there, and it was so steep I was afraid it was going to upset my tractor to try to get above it to do that. So then I got below it with my forks and got underneath of it and lifted it and got it back up on its feet. And when I got it back up on its wheels, then it started running, and I forgot I hadn't put it in gear. It was still neutral, and it went to running, and I'm sitting on my tractor watching it, and I couldn't do anything about it. And it just went, and then it turned down toward the big creek out here. Big old wide creek's probably 15 or 20 feet wide across the creek. And that thing just went flying off the hill, and I'm sitting there on my tractor watching it, and it just shoots right out and lands right in the middle of the creek. Then I had to go climb out in the creek and get in it, and I was able to find a place where the bank was low enough that I could shoot back up over the bank and get it back in the meadow.
What about your the Honda Accord when you fell asleep?
Oh yeah.
You always had a problem with trying to stay awake. You're always driving
Yeah.
long distances.
Yeah, well, Uncle Ronnie and I put in satellite dishes for several years, And so I was coming back late at night, probably 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning from Parkersburg. About halfway between Parkersburg and West Union, there was a deep snow out in the median of the 4-lane, Route 50. And so I'm driving and I went to sleep and just drove right off the road and went in that median, and then there was like a culvert type thing down there, a drainage area, that when I drove off, I jolted down that. When I jolted, it woke me up, and I realized I was doing like 60, 65 mile an hour going down the center of between the 2 4-lanes, and that jolt woke me up. And then I was driving out through the snow, and it was real deep, and I thought, you know, I'm not going to get back up in here because I'm stuck in the snow. But I just poured the gas to it and headed back toward the 4-lane and got almost up in the road and spun out front wheel drive. I didn't quite get up out of the snow, so I was stuck. Guy came along in a truck after a while and hooked a chain to me and pulled me back in the road, and I came home.
What about your Clorox?
Well, I don't know why we put Clorox in bottles for a while. No, we were
Mom
drinking.
used to store our water in Clorox jugs.
That was it.
We had those big Clorox jugs. She'd clean them out real good,
Mm-hmm.
and then she'd use them, and then she would fill up our water jugs
Mm-hmm.
in the fridge.
Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah, we had jugs in the fridge that said Clorox on them.
No, you're going.
Oh.
No, the jugs were underneath of the kitchen table, and they said Clorox. I mean, they said water or whatever on them, and then us boys had our own individual water jugs in there, and they weren't Clorox jugs. They were just water jugs
Oh.
full of water, and then there was also a regular full water pitcher, but that water pitcher was empty that day, and you were outside in the hayfield, and you came in and you grabbed my water jug and turned it up and started guzzling it, and Mom had accidentally put real Clorox
Oh.
in our water jugs.
Well, I knew I drank raw Clorox, full
Yeah.
Clorox. I was thirsty and grabbed that out thinking it was water. And I turned it up, and I guzzled a whole bunch of that Clorox. And it had no taste, no odor, until I'd already guzzled a whole bunch of it. Of course, it burned my throat and burned my stomach, but didn't have major problems. I didn't go to the hospital or anything.
Are you sure, Dad?
I don't think so.
I'm
What do
very-
you think they could do?
I'm thinking you vomited immediately, and we took you to the emergency room.
No, I don't remember. I
Yeah.
don't remember. Might have, but yeah, I did drink Clorox.
Yeah, because remember, they said that if, the doctor said that if anybody with a small stomach had drank that, it would have killed them. So if I would have drank that, it could have killed me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
All right. Was there any struggles that you and Mom had? I mean, can you think of any struggles? I don't
No.
mean like with each other relationship wise, but like financially or hard
No,
times.
we didn't have a lot of money, but we never worried about it. You know.
Mom wasn't a big spender.
No, she was conservative. Yeah.
She wasn't always looking to buy new clothes
No.
or new
No.
anything really.
Yeah. No, we didn't really have any struggles. I mean, we weren't well off, but we had enough money to get by.
Yeah, I always said we had kind of a interesting life because I can remember when there was a time where we weren't poor, but I would wear like hand-me-downs and things like Alicia, and but then as time progressed, then you made more and more, and eventually we were middle class and upper middle class, and you know, we were never rich or
Yeah,
anything, but
yeah.
we kind of got to see all. But really, our lives were not any different.
No.
I mean, other than you had more things, I guess, but
Yeah, that's true.
we had a kind of a range. How did you become a Christian?
I was attending church down here at Avon. It was a United Methodist Church at that time. That was United Brethren at that time. Later, the United Brethren and the Methodists combined, and they called it United Methodist. But it was United Brethren. It was a pretty conservative church back then. And I was just down there for revival, and I just, felt that I needed to be saved. And the preacher preached about hell, and I didn't want to go there. And so, I decided I just wanted to be a Christian. And so I just went forward and asked Jesus to be my Savior. And so I tried to become a good Christian.
Now, was Uncle Dave? Did he go forward with you? I was thinking that Uncle Dave and you went forward at the same revival.
I don't think so, but now I'm not sure, but I don't think so.
And then because I was thinking Grandma said that Uncle Jim and Aunt Trennis were saved at a
We were
different.
baptized. Uncle Dave and I were baptized at the same time.
Okay.
But I don't remember about if he went forward the same night that I did or not.
Okay. What's your advice to Christians new to the faith?
Just remember that that Jesus died for you and He loves you, and even if you make mistakes and you're not perfect, He doesn't expect perfection. He just expects you to be the best you can be. And read your Bible and try to learn and listen to that small, still voice. Is what it's telling you.
Have you ever doubted your own salvation?
No, your mom struggled with that.
Right, I
Mom
know.
really did.
Which is always kind of silly because Mom was such a strong Christian.
Yeah. No, I just know that I did all I could do. The Bible just says to believe in what He's done and the work that He did, and over time I've studied and learned about all that, and I just figure that's all I could do was go forward and ask Him to be my Lord and Savior and trust Him to take care of me. And so never really doubted there's anything else I could do. But your mom struggled with that because she always felt like, have I done enough? Have I done enough to earn? And am I really saved? And so she struggled with it, and we talked about that a lot.
Yeah, I always struggle with that too. Of course.
Yeah.
I mean, I think most Christians do have some doubt, but some people are not. That just doesn't seem to enter in. Have you ever doubted God's existence or Christianity invalidity?
No, I look, nature itself is enough to tell you that there's a creator of all this. It can't just be from a Big Bang theory or something like that. And, I just believe that creation is what God's handiwork is.
I think it probably helps if you grew up where you see a lot of creation.
Yeah.
Some people, they live in the city where they don't even see trees or anything like that.
Yeah.
So it's all you see is man's creations.
Right.
What Christian leaders have been the biggest example to you?
Christian leaders. Well, of course, Billy Graham. I've always thought there was nobody like Billy Graham. And I've attended some of the, independent fundamental Christian Baptist meetings, like Dr. Curtis Hudson and some of the people that are, when I attended Mount Salem Baptist Church, had some really good Christian leaders there. Pastor was so dedicated. So, I've seen like Uncle Marshall Cumpston, good Christian witness, and I've heard him preach, and he never preached without crying. He always cried.
I remember.
And Grandma Cumpston always said that she hated to go to a funeral that Uncle Marsh preached, because funerals were sad enough without Uncle Marsh crying through the sermon. But yeah, I had a lot of good Christian witnesses and examples that I've been able to look up to.
And Uncle Marsh was a pretty famous preacher around here. I mean, that's Grandpa Cumpson's brother.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, his farm's right beside of yours.
Yeah.
Rick lives there now, owns that now. But Uncle Marsh, he would travel around to various churches, right? I mean, it wasn't like he just went to one church.
Yeah, Uncle Marsh preached over at Pike Fork on Route 23 over next to Salem, and preached over at Grove, and preached at the Union Mission and preached in Haleville and at Weston. Uncle Morris preached a lot of places, and of course you and Uncle Jim liked to go with him. He loved for you guys to come with him. And
Oh yeah.
Mother always thought the world of Uncle Morris, and he took me coon hunting the first night I ever went coon hunting. That's actually, you asked when I started coon hunting. Uncle Morris was the first one. He had took me up here in the Stewart Hollow, and he had 2 dogs. One of them was an old dog that was about worn out, and its teeth were about worn out, where it couldn't hardly kill a coon. And the other was a 3-legged dog. So we took those 2 dogs up here in Holland. He treated a coon, and he shot it out, but he just kind of wounded it. It was still pretty strong and sassy. And he said, I'm going to hold this old dog and let that 3-legged dog, younger, I'm going to let that 3-legged dog kill the coon. So that 3-legged dog fought that coon all over the place, and he couldn't kill it. The coon was eating the dog up. And so then he tied that 3-legged dog back, and he said, I'm going to let the old dog kill him. Turned the old dog loose on him, and he couldn't kill that coon either. So finally he turned both dogs loose at the same time, and they crunched its back, and that was the end of the raccoon. Yeah, Uncle Morris he was a hunter, and that was another kind of funny story about him. He loved to deer hunt, and he went from one deer season to the next, just looking forward to that first day of gun season. So that was his big passion. He had 2 passions in life. One was the church and, ministry, and the other was deer hunting. He loved them both. And it was hard to tell, where he stood on both of those, because he loved to deer hunt. So before deer season, that weekend, the deer season always started on Monday, so like Friday and Saturday, he and his son Rick and his son-in-law, Butch Carpenter, and Sonny, Nancy Cumpston's husband, they would all come in, and they'd spend the weekend oiling their guns up and driving up and down the roads and figuring out where they were going to hunt and looking for deer to try to figure out where the best place would be to get a deer. So anyway, he spent the weekend getting ready. And so on a Sunday afternoon, before the next day was deer season, when he couldn't wait to go out and have that deer hunt on Monday, the guy up the road, it was a big jokester, Davy Nicholson, called Uncle Morris up on the phone. And he said, hello, Brother Cumpston. He said, this is so-and-so from over here in Gilmer County. And he said, my dad just passed away the other day, and he thought the world of you. And we were wondering if you could hold his funeral tomorrow afternoon. That was the first day of deer season. Uncle Morris said, well, he didn't know what to say. He had to make a choice. And luckily, Davy let him off the hook. Davy went to laughing and said, oh, this is just Dave Nicholson up there. But that was Uncle Morris.
That's funny. Let's see. What do you think of TV preachers?
For people to shut in, that can't get out, it's good to have good TV preachers. Most of my experience has not been positive. It appears to me, which I don't know what people's motivations are and can't speak for somebody else, but it's seemed to me that a lot of them have been in it to make money. They ask you to send a contribution, and they'll send you a prayer cloth or something like that, and doesn't seem right. But I'm sure there are a lot of good preachers on TV, and it just depends on their motivation.
Right.
And there's some people that need that.
Right, of course. Have you ever considered becoming a preacher or pastor?
No, the closest I ever came was at one time at Indian Fork. I'd attended there since I was young, and I taught the adult Sunday school class from when I was in my mid-20s probably. So I'd been involved in the church, and at one point they didn't have any deacons, which is just like under a pastor, and their deacons were supposed to provide some spiritual leadership to the church and take care of a lot of the functions of the church. So they asked me if I would be set aside for a year as for a deacon. And the way they did it was you're set aside for a year and you serve as a deacon for a year. And then at the end of the year, if the church thought you were doing a good job as deacon, they wanted you to continue, then they would have you ordained as a deacon. They'd have other deacons and other preachers come in from other churches, and they'd have what they call a big ordination service, and you'd be ordained as a deacon in the church. So they set me aside as a deacon for a year, and so I accepted when they asked me to do it, but I only did it for like 5 or 6, 7 months, and after a period of time, I felt like I was being phony. I was doing things just to be what I was expected to be. You know, I was sitting up in the front row of the church, and I was saying amen a lot when I didn't really feel like that was what I needed to say. So I felt after a period of time that I was not being myself. And so I told him after 5 or 6 months, I said, you know, this is not me, and I'm trying to be something that I'm not. And I just want to be, you know, a good Christian, and I don't want to be something that I don't feel is my calling. So I quit. But no, I've never felt called to be a pastor.
Now, but you have been Sunday school teacher, of course.
Yeah, I was a Sunday school teacher most of my life.
And you taught the adults. Do you teach any kids, or?
I have. For maybe a year or so, I taught young people. Now I'd teach summer vacation Bible school. But as I got older, and some of the younger kids in summer vacation Bible school got, you know, kind of difficult to deal with, I finally said, you know, I'm finished. You know, I've taught school all my life, and I'm not going to teach any more vacation Bible school in the summer because these kids are too obnoxious.
But you taught the adult class. Did you start at Indian Fork, or did you start at Sunrise Baptist?
No, I was at Indian Fork. Yeah. Yeah, I never taught Sunrise Baptist. Jim Michaels was the adult Sunday school teacher at Sunrise Baptist.
But you were the assistant.
I don't
You
remember.
You taught when he couldn't.
I might have.
You
I
still
might
remember.
have. Yeah, I might have.
Yeah.
But no, I mostly taught at Indian Fork as the adult Sunday school teacher, and I taught Wednesday night Bible study, or if we had Sunday night Bible study, I'd teach Sunday night Bible study.
What got you into farming?
Well, I was raised here on the farm, and I just loved it. Loved the animals and horses and cows, and that's what Pap Cumpston did. And so when I moved back here, he was getting older, and so I just kind of started buying a few cows and the horses, and it was just something I've always enjoyed. I've always liked to farm.
And Grandpa, I mean, the farm was always his, but like, it was also always yours. It was even more. It was actually more yours. You never really thought of a Grandpa.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he was tinkering around out here, but I mean, you pretty much ran everything.
Yeah, once I got moved back here, and that was one thing that I missed when he died, was when he was alive, he shared with me in the pleasures of farming. I mean, if I got hay up, he was happy for me. If I had a calf born, I could tell him, well, I had a calf born last night, it's doing great, or he would help me with things. And so when he died, that was something I missed.
Oh yeah, Grandpa was definitely. You guys were totally different in a lot of ways, but then you were also totally the same in a lot of your likes and your.
Yeah, we both liked farming. And, we liked to work. Both of us liked to be out and putter around.
Well, Grandpa liked for other people to do the work, though.
Oh yeah, he was good at getting everybody else to work. This will only take 5 minutes.
It's got one more little job.
Yeah.
Turn into 20.
Yeah. Remember one time Uncle Dave, Grandpa Cumpston told him to walk up here in the field and get a shovel, and so Uncle Dave just sauntered up there. Whenever Pap Cumpston asked me to go get something, I would run and get it and run back. I just did things in a hurry. And Uncle Dave kind of just sauntered along, got up there and got the shovel and just started back down through the field, and he would just walk along slow, and Pap comes and said, "Dave, I don't want that thing next week." Dave just set the shovel down and walked on back down.
Of course, Uncle Jim didn't move at all.
No, Uncle Jim and Grandpa whipped him a lot. I remember one time Daddy told Jim to go in and get his shoes for him out of the other room. And Jim said, "Huh, get them yourself." Well, off came the belt, whack, whack with the belt, and Grandma Compton yelling, "Rex, stop, Rex, stop!" And Uncle Jim screaming. And then after he'd quit whipping Uncle Jim would go crawl underneath the bed and cry for an hour. And then he'd come back out from underneath the bed after an hour, and Daddy would say, "Jim, get those shoes." And then Jim would stomp in there and get them, and he'd come back to the door. Instead of walking over and putting them down, he'd just throw them. They'd come bouncing, come the belt again. So that was Uncle Jim and Pap Compton. Uncle Jim could be very stubborn. He never backed down from anything. Uncle Jim, you could not scare him, no matter what threats you gave him. He wasn't afraid of anything. It's just like he loved to get hugs. And Connie would threaten him, because he was always teasing her. He liked to tease everybody.
Of course.
And he'd tease Connie. And so one day she said, she talked kind of mean, like she meant it, but she didn't really mean it. She was just kind of saying it, just give him a hard time. But she said, "Jim, if you say one more word to me, I'm never going to hug you again." And Jim said, "Oh, Connie, never say never, never say never." So
Yeah.
you couldn't back Uncle Jim down.
No.
That was why he got in trouble, because he didn't know to step back.
Right.
Wherever he was, that's where he was going to stay.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he wasn't phony.
No.
Wasn't a phony
no,
bone in his body.
No.
He definitely was not gonna let somebody like especially let somebody like Grandpa Compton.
Mm-hmm.
And Grandpa Compton was not somebody you would
No.
just take lightly. He was
No.
hard.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I was always scared of Grandpa Compton when I was a kid. I mean, he'd tell me to do something, I was flying to get it done.
Oh yeah. Now, did you? How did you come up with the way that you was gonna discipline like us boys? Did you model that after Grandma and Grandpa, the way they disciplined, or?
No, not really. It was just kind of common sense to say, this is what I expect you to do, and I didn't set expectations where were silly or unreasonable, like, you can't run through the grass here, you're going to tear up the grass. Tear up the grass, I didn't care. The expectations were that I didn't want you to do something that would hurt you or would hurt somebody else, or hurt their feelings or something like that. So, or you weren't to hit one another. Those were just certain expectations. So I tried not to make rules that were unreasonable or, punitive, but just rules that would keep some fair order, and where you wouldn't get hurt or you wouldn't hurt somebody else. And so I established those guidelines, and I'd like to draw a line, and I'd say, if you do this, if you hit Aaron, then you're going to get punished. And I'd tell you what was going to be, what was going to happen. And so then you made a choice, and it was very plain, and you knew what the choice was. And if you chose to cross that line, then I just administered whatever it said I was going to do, and I didn't vary from that. So you always knew what to expect and what would happen. So just like setting what I would hope were reasonable guidelines that weren't unfair or, just arbitrary or something that would make you feel bad, but just set reasonable guidelines and set a line and say, if you cross that line, this is what's going to happen. And then what happened, just go ahead and administer whatever discipline it was. And so that's how I came up with it, just whatever I thought was reasonable and fair, and or you wouldn't be hurt or hurt somebody else.
And I think one of the things I always kind of stole off of you is, and I really wasn't as good as you at doing it, but not showing frustration when you gave the consequences.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, this is the consequence. If it was a whipping, or if it was, sitting in a chair, or if it was a, whatever the consequence was, your emotions weren't part of it.
No, I'd say you were as good or better at that than I was with your kids in school when you corrected kids at school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I
off the crack and go to the back.
right.
You had those rules that the kids knew. You told them you stand on this crack in the sidewalk while you're waiting to go into the lunch cafeteria, and if you step off that crack, because that was the way to keep them organized where they wouldn't be out shoving one another and getting out of line. And they knew that that was a reasonable thing because you had to keep some order. And you just told them, if you step off the crack, you'll go to the back of the line. And then when they stepped off the crack, you just say, okay, you're off the crack, go to the back.
And if they gave me any lip at that point, then I would have another spot where they'd go and they'd sit until everybody waited in line.
Yeah.
And I never got mad. I didn't say, I can't believe you're not going to do this. I just, whatever it was, then okay, then this is what you're going to do now.
Right.
And if they wouldn't sit in the place I gave them, then they had to go to the office. I mean, it was just and these were all kids that they weren't my actual classroom kids.
Right.
They were just, so I just had to develop a system. But yeah, but a lot of that was stuff that I noticed it worked well with you. You'd never, I never seen you lose your temper as much as I ever remember. And, and certainly not at mom, but, yeah, how do you keep from losing your temper with people?
I don't know. I guess I probably do, but I just, I would always think the best of everybody. I do. I just think the best. I think there's good in everybody, even people who are very mean, to me or to somebody else. I just see good in everybody. So, if you see good in people, you're not really going to get mad at them because you understand that what they do is because of certain things that causes them to do that. And if you can help correct that or guide that, then you want to do it. And if it's something you can't control and they can't control, you just have to deal with it, and it's who they are. But they have good qualities. They're good people.
Right. Yeah, that's good advice. Have you always had a positive attitude, and where do you believe this comes from? It's kind of like a little bit of along that line, but but me and you both are pretty positive. You're more positive than me, though. You always pretty much see the positive. What do you think that comes from?
I don't know. I guess I just always see the good in everything and everybody. And so I guess when you feel that way about life, that you can be positive about it. Just figure everything's going to work out, and things that aren't perfect and don't work out, there's nothing you can do about it. So just accept what comes your way and enjoy life and appreciate it. And I've been accused, Connie sometimes accuses me of being too optimistic. She says, you don't look at things the way they really are. You're not being realistic.
Right.
But, I guess I err on the side of always thinking the best.
Were Grandma and Grandpa like that? I don't remember that.
Yeah, I think they were very positive. One thing Grandpa Compston never wanted to do was, if he had an animal that died, he would tell me, don't tell anybody that your animal died. He just didn't like to accept, I guess, bad luck or something. So, he was very careful about not letting anybody know when you had a failure.
Right.
Grandma Compston, of course, she had a wonderful positive attitude. She was never down. I never saw her down or depressed or angry at anyone.
No.
She was perfect, as close to perfect as a woman can be.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Of course, she spoiled you. She made you everything you wanted to eat. Even though your mom would say, now he's got to have his fruits and vegetables, Fern.
She was just looking to fill your belly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely, You definitely had your fight on your hands keeping me here. I wanted to live with Grandma at all times.
Sure, who wouldn't?
Luckily, she was just that close.
Yeah.
What were some of the hardest times in your life, and what got you through those? We kind of already talked about that. With Mom being diagnosed with TTP. Did that situation cause you to question God or be angry at Him? I know I was closer to God during her illness due to her courage, but after her death, I was actually angry at God, and I didn't really speak to God for probably a year. I kind of just, I mean, obviously looking back, obviously I shouldn't have been mad at God.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't no reason to be, but I kind of was just like, okay, I've got my ticket to heaven. I'm going to ride this train, but I'm not talking to you. You know, I was just wasn't happy because I just thought, as good a person Mom was, that she should have been able to have been healed. But I mean, obviously we know looking back that people aren't always healed. That's not the way it works. I mean, that's just life. I mean,
Right.
Everybody dies.
Mm-hmm.
But was you ever a little bit angry at God, or?
No. Nope. I was never angry at God. I was very sad, with Mom's loss. No, I know that the Bible says the rain falls on the just and the unjust, and so those things happen to good people and bad people. And she was one of the best.
Right. It's not a matter of prayer and faith. I mean, it can be if God chooses to do that, but sometimes it's just
No, I was very sad, but I never got angry at God. I just it was a devastating loss, and like I say, I'd been teaching the adult Sunday school class until she died, and then when she died, I couldn't get up in church. I mean, for a year, I just sat on the back row and cried.
Yeah. What went through your mind when you got the news of stage 4 pancreatic cancer?
It was scary. My mind just kept racing. Pancreatic cancer, pancreatic cancer, pancreatic cancer. I just kept thinking. I couldn't get that out of my mind. But it was like other things that I've dealt with. I just figured, whatever happens, happens. And I have a good attitude toward that. Because, like you say, we're all destined to die. And this life's not permanent. So, nobody wants to die. It's built into the human body to fight to survive. That's why your heart beats, and that's why you keep going, because your body genetically has a desire to live. So we're going to all want to live as long as we can possibly live. But I know that we're not going to live forever. And it was scary first, but then over time, I said, what happens, happens, So, yeah.
Luckily, you had Aaron, who's a bone marrow transplant specialist.
Yeah,
your son.
Aaron's been perfect.
You really couldn't have had a better opportunity.
Right. Yeah, Aaron's set me up with the best doctors. He's followed everything, and he actually does my chemotherapy plan, my treatment plan. And they threw the toughest chemotherapy at me that they could throw. It's called FOLFIRINOX or something. Aaron knows the name of it. But it's a concoction of chemicals that are the toughest that they can throw at your body to try to fight cancer, because pancreatic cancer is so hard to get to because it hides in the pancreas, and it's probably the most difficult cancer to get under control. So they threw the hardest things they had at me, and Aaron did a super job of getting everything coordinated, and he helps me. He calls me almost every night. He helps me with if I have a problem with diarrhea or nausea, which luckily I haven't had any nausea. I mean, most people that take chemotherapy, the day of their chemotherapy, like J.B. Heflin up the road here, when he comes home, he says that on the way home he'll have to stop, and have to stop the car, and he'll lean out and vomit several times on the way home, and he'll vomit for 2 or 3 days. And he's not taking probably as much chemo drugs. I don't know what he's taking, but I think what I'm taking is the most you can take. And most people do. They're very sick for 2 or 3 days, but I'm actually feel better after my chemotherapy for 2 or 3 days, and I never have felt nauseous at all. So I've been very fortunate.
And you're basically you basically have more energy on the days you say you take chemo.
Right. When I come back, I'm so hyper that night, the first night when I come back from chemo, I'm so hyper, I'm up all night, awake all night. I'm thinking about all these things I want to do the next day, and I can't wait to get out and get to work. And so, yeah, I've been very active. Now, for a while, after a few days, I'd have some fatigue. I'd want to just sleep for maybe 2 or 3 or 4 hours in the afternoon. So I have had some fatigue with it, but almost no nausea at all. I took one anti-nausea pill one time. That's all I've taken. Now, I just kind of felt like I might need it then, but yeah, I've been real fortunate.
Yeah, and you didn't have any more hair fall out.
No, still got all the hair I had before.
I mean, you had a good combination because you had your super positive attitude, and you knew you were going to beat it or as best as you could.
Yeah.
And then you had Aaron.
Yeah.
Pulling all the strings and making sure that everything was done right.
Right.
Now you're coming up on now, so you did the chemo. How many months did you do that?
I did 12 treatments every 2 weeks apart.
And
so that was like 6 months. I had a week or two I'd miss, so it's been about 8 months total. But
when did it start showing in remission?
I think about halfway through, after about 3 months, maybe 3.5 months, it started going into remission. Yeah, the PET scans showed nothing in the pancreas or in the liver.
Which is very rare.
Very rare.
Usually with pancreatic cancer, Aaron really thought that,
Yeah, 1 or 2 years is about what you can expect.
Right. So, but since it's been shown in remission, you've gained your weight back.
Yeah.
And you're able to pretty much do your farm work.
Oh yeah, I'm doing just as well as I ever did. Now I do once in a while, I'll trip over something and fall down. And every time I go into the hospital for a treatment or anything, one of the questions they always ask is, have you had a fall in the last month? And I always say no. I'm not going to tell them I've had a fall. No. Because if I do, and I have to go, and they'll put that on my chart, then if I have to go in the hospital for something, they're not going to let me get out of bed without a nurse there. So if I need to go to the bathroom or want to do something, run down the hall, I can't do it because they'll make me stay in bed without a nurse. So no, I'll never tell them I fall down. But once in a while, anybody's going to trip and fall down.
Right.
Now here on the farm, I'm around all kinds of ropes and junk, and it's easy for me to trip and fall down.
And you really don't learn from falling down, Dad, because you hardly feel pain.
Yeah.
You've got a pain mechanism, but you pulled your own tooth once.
Yeah, I pulled a tooth with a pair of pliers. I didn't get actually the whole thing out. It broke off down in the gum, and I had to go to the dentist and have that last little bit pulled out. But yeah, I took a pair of pliers and pulled that tooth.
And your hands pretty much always, I can always remember as a kid, they were always black and blue. Your thumbs especially.
Yeah, you usually have a nail that's black. I don't now, but I've almost always got where I've hit it with a hammer or something. Yeah, I've almost always got a thumbnail growing out.
Where do you think you get that high pain tolerance?
I don't know.
Does Grandpa Compson like that? I cannot imagine.
I don't know.
Maybe Grandma.
Yeah, could be.
Because Grandpa, he was more like me. He wasn't going to put up with any pain.
Yeah, no, he was a wimp.
Right.
Grandpa Compson. If anybody was sick, he wouldn't get close to you. If I had the flu, Mother would be right on top of me, covering me up and bringing me food and, taking care of me. She wasn't a bit afraid that she was going to catch it. She was right there. But Daddy, he wouldn't be within an earshot of you if he thought you had something contagious.
he was definitely a wheeler dealer too.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you didn't really take after him on that. I get a little more of his wheel and deal and selling than you did. You were.
Yeah, I don't usually make much money on deals.
Yeah. You got a little better in life.
He could sell people a dog, and they would be unhappy with the dog because it would be running deer or something when it wasn't supposed to run a deer, and they'd bring it back, and they'd trade him for another dog that was worse than one that he sold them first, and they'd give him more money and they'd be happy. Yeah, he was good at selling.
Oh yeah, he was definitely good with people. Grandma and Grandpa both
Yeah,
were people.
yeah, they were.
I mean, people persons or whatever you want to call them.
Yeah,
Elite.
they loved to have people come. They both loved for people to come. Like we'd have church groups camp out over here in the field, and they just wanted them to be here. They wanted them to feel welcome, and Mother would bring food, and Daddy would take the four-wheeler and haul the kids around the four-wheeler. He'd have horses saddled up and take the kids for rides with the horses and
Tug of wars across the creek.
tug of wars. Yeah, but they loved to have people come and enjoy the farm.
Mm-hmm.
Their home was always open.
Oh yeah. Now, when you did find out about the cancer, I mean, did that do anything? How did that affect your Christian life? And like, were you mad? Were you? I know you weren't mad at God, but I mean, were you a little?
No, it's just like with your mom's death. It was just that's life.
Right.
I don't point to God or question God about that. It has nothing to do with my feelings toward Him.
Right. That's good.
Yeah.
But one thing I always said is I think God used Mom's illness to, like Mom always said, people that normally weren't praying were on their knees praying for her.
Yeah.
And I think she was kind of maybe talking about us boys possibly too. We got closer to God
Yeah.
through that, seeing how strong her and obviously you are to fight to see, you know, obviously two people that should never have anything bad happen to them, but you've got some of the worst things can just all of a sudden strike.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not like you've smoked for 30 years and you know, or drank. You don't smoke or drink.
Yeah.
And you know, so it's not like you kind of are reaping something you sowed. I mean, if you had diabetes, then which you do.
Yeah, I do.
But you have pretty much beat that down.
Mm-hmm.
Now, are you still considered diabetic though?
Well, no, actually, my A1C, which is the number you look at for diabetic, is I think it was last time I checked was 5.7, and I think it's supposed to be above 7 to be diabetic. So I'm in the non-diabetic range, but I do take diabetic. I take insulin. I take pills, not insulin pills, but I take pills, metformin pills. So I do take pills to control it. So yeah, I'm probably still considered diabetic, simply because I have to take pills. But my numbers are down where they should be, so I'm pretty good on that.
And you're not constantly, like Grandma and Grandpa Kempson were constantly lightheaded and
No.
but they would just, I guess their diet must have been, they must have not been following any kind of diet.
Yeah, probably not. I don't know. But talking about your mom, I forget what you were saying there, but I was going to tell you that. You talk about people praying for her, and she said that, you know, her illness might have been a good influence maybe on you boys or on other people. But she had a prayer list of certain things that she prayed for every day, and one of them was you boys, that you'd be Christians and that you would all find good wives. That was on her list, and she prayed for our marriage.
Oh yeah, and Mom would. I remember Mom when she wasn't even. It was probably a year before she passed. I remember she pulled us boys aside and she said, you know, whoever your dad remarries, I want you to accept him because I don't want your dad to be alone. So I mean, she was very It wasn't a selfish bone in Mom's body hardly.
No.
I mean, everybody's selfish to a degree, but yeah, Mom, she definitely tried to give us boys and you the best she could.
Yeah, I always called her an angel on earth.
Yeah, there wasn't any. Can't get any better Mom. Nobody had a mom or a wife that was more dedicated.
No.
I mean, there's no way. You just can't do it. That was her life. She didn't have hardly any hobbies. Painting. Occasionally, she might go play tennis or something, but like, really, her life was just us boys
Yeah.
and here, and
Yeah.
that was it. What are your you're now, we're about 3 days out from your big Whipple procedure, so that's, even though you're in remission, you're doing great, you're actually taking a little more aggressive stance, and you're going to actually try to have the Whipple procedure to remove anything in there that might cause you future problems. Basically, you're shot at a cure.
Yeah.
So are you pretty excited about it, or?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, and I'm pretty positive that it will be a good thing, but it's like everything else. Whatever happens, happens.
Yeah.
I'm fine with, if things don't go as we'd hoped or planned, that's what God's will is. That's God's plan.
What advice would you have for anybody that has a similar diagnosis, cancer, basically?
Yeah. It's just like every other thing in life. It's just like you have issues of sadness that comes your way through family and problems that you face every day. It's just like any other problem that you come upon. Just approach it with the best attitude that you can and do what you can to take care of it yourself, and what you can't control, don't worry about.
Do your best and forget the rest.
Yeah, that's it. Do your best and forget the rest.
I know you always had complete confidence in us boys' ability to do anything, and you never talked negative or belittled us. You always built us up and encouraged us. Did your parents and grandparents pretty much do the same thing? Was that?
Yeah.
Were they? I mean.
It wasn't through so much as what they said, as it's like anything else. People can say I love you,
Right.
but their actions are going to tell you whether they do or not. So and that was the way with Grandpa Cumpston. He would never say I love you,
Right.
or you're a great son, or anything like that. He wouldn't say that. But the fact that he relied on me to do things and to help him with things told me that he had confidence in me. And same with Grandma Cumpston. So they didn't build me up with words, but with their way they treated me, and the way they reacted to me, told me that they liked me.
Yes. You were definitely the favorite son. I mean.
I don't know. Grandma Cumpston was crazy about Uncle Jim. She felt so sorry for him,
It's true.
living by himself in Parkersburg. But yeah, Grandma Cumpston and I were very close. Very close.
You were definitely Grandpa's favorite. There's no doubt on that.
Yeah, I was his worker.
Right.
He wanted to get something done. He didn't have to push or shove or kick or pull.
Right. Yeah, but I forgot about Uncle Jim. That's true. Grandma.
Yeah.
But she kind of babied him. He was.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously.
She felt sorry for him.
Right. Right. Yeah, Grandma's. Yeah, the only time I ever remember Grandma talking cross to me was I remember one time me and Garth were up there, and Uncle Jim was deviling us, but we started giving it back to him a little bit. Garth can get real rough.
Oh yeah.
So Grandma pulled us aside. I mean, she literally, she ripped us in two real quick. I mean, she spoke stern. I'll never forget that. You don't mess it up with Jim.
No, you didn't hurt Uncle Jim.
No. But I always remember you sacrificing for us boys and doing the majority of the work on the farm. Do you feel your parents sacrificed for you similarly, or And was there anything that your parents did that you said, I'm going to do this different, or I'm going to follow that, and just
Yeah. No, Grandma Cumpston was a sacrificer. She was a big sacrificer, and she gave of herself for everybody else. It's just like she would deprive herself of sleep to make sure that your needs and my needs and her visitors or guests' needs were met. So yeah, she was a sacrificial person.
yeah, that's kind of where you got that from. And Grandpa, he was a little more. He was looking to put others to work.
Oh yeah, he could get you to work.
I remember he put me to work one time, and it got to be dark, and he put me on the back of the three-wheeler and was going to take me up, had something else for me he wanted me to do up there at his house, and you stopped him at the road over there, and you said, where are you going? And Grandpa said, oh, I got something, a little something to do up here, and you said, no, Brad's done enough. You said, no, I've never told you no in my entire life. You told me to do something. But he said, it's dark and Brad's done. You've worked him long enough. So,
Yeah.
I remember I got off the four-wheeler.
I can imagine that.
And Grandpa, he had no mercy once he get a hold of you.
Yeah.
He'd work you.
Oh yeah.
But you learned a lot from him.
Yeah.
I mean, he knew everything.
Mm-hmm.
I really wish I'd spent more time
Mm-hmm.
gleaning from things he knew. You can answer that. I'll answer it out.
Hello. Okay, I only have one left. It's a black male. hmm Well, he's about 10 weeks old. Normally I let them go when they're 6 weeks, so he's a little bit bigger than the little tiny puppy stage, but he's out of a huge father. He's going to be a big dog. Oh yeah, he'll be very big. Big blocky head. Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, his father has the biggest, blockiest head you ever see. Yeah. Yeah, oh yeah. Pure black. I live up in West Virginia. I'm about 1 hour on the other side of Parkersburg, up Route 50 east. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you'd be about 1 hour and 15 minutes. 400. They're AKC registered, have all their shots and wormings, yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That'd be fine. Okay, it's, are you ready to write? Okay, it's 708 Indian, Indian, Fork, Fork, Road, New Milton, Milton, New Milton, West Virginia, 26411, 26411. Yeah, that would be fine. No, it's not hard to find. If you decide to come, you give me a call, and I'll actually give you some written directions on top of that GPS if you want me to, and it'll be easy to find. Okay. Yeah, that'll be fine. Thank you. Bye. That's somebody calling about that one pup I've got left to sell. Oh boy, I gotta run to the bathroom. Didn't mean we took a break.
Okay, yeah.
I need to go.
This will be the best interview I've had yet. That's good. One thing, I waited a little too long to interview Grandma and Grandpa Compston, or Grandpa Compston and Grandpa James. Got some good footage though.
Oh, those are great.
They were great, but I really wish I had got them a little bit younger.
Well, they were characters. I mean, they were characters.
Right. They were definitely. You're much sharper physically. I mean, you look great, and you don't really look like any different when you were like in your 50s. I mean, how old are you?
71.
You're 71.
71, yeah.
What was your birthday?
November 28th. That was the day your mom died. She died on my birthday.
Right. And what year?
1995.
No, I mean, what year was you born?
Oh, 1948.
1948. Edward Lee Compston. Where's those names come from?
My grandfather, Edward Lee Compston.
So, and then do you know where the,
No, I don't know where he got his name from. No.
did you like your name?
Yeah, I've always liked that name. Yeah.
And you prefer Ed, Eddie, Edward?
Ed is, Ed's what everybody calls me is Ed. But some of the people like the Stewarts, they call me Eddie.
I was gonna say.
And that's kind of, it's nice. It's like your little kid, and it's, I'm glad that they do call me Eddie.
Right.
Have you got that thing taken now?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And Uncle Jim, what would he call you now?
Oh, he'd call me Edward sometimes.
Edward?
But, yeah, Edward, oh.
Because he kind of had different names for everybody. He called me JB sometimes, but what about Grandma Mary and Grandma Blanche? How close were you to your grandmas? I mean, were you as close to your grandmas as like I was? I mean, there's nobody closer than me.
No, nothing like you and Grandma Compston.
Right,
Yeah.
and Grandma James.
Right.
Our grandparents were our lives. I mean, you literally, you took us to see Grandma and Grandpa James every other weekend, was
Or
it?
every weekend, a lot of times.
Yeah, most of the time, every
Yeah.
Somebody the other day said every other weekend, but I was thinking it's almost every
We
weekend.
went really often because I like to go over there.
Right.
I love to go over there.
And we never felt like we were intruding.
Oh no,
I
no,
mean-
they were just so happy to see us.
Oh yeah, they wanted you
Yeah.
to stay longer.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, they were glad to have us. Now, my relationship with Grandma Blanche, that was my dad's mother. She lived with us. Mother took her in probably 15 years before she died. And before that, she had lived up with Uncle Marsh in a little cellar house. She had a little house up there beside Uncle Marsh's house. That's where she lived when she was younger and able to take care of herself. But then when she got dementia, and she couldn't take care of herself, then she moved in with Mother and Daddy. And Mother took care of her just like it was her own mother. And she carried food to her all the time, and just was wonderful to Grandma Blanche. And Grandma Blanche was good to her. She'd always say, "Thank you, honey," whenever Mother would bring her food or whatever. So Grandma Blanche was a sweetheart. She was really nice and real soft, and she was never mean or anything. But now Uncle Dave would tease her. He'd say, "Okay, Grandma, I'm going to tell you a number, and in the 30 seconds, I'm going to ask you what that number is, and I expect you to remember it." Of course, she'd get after him for that. But I remember one time Uncle Dave was playing with a gun in the house. I think it was a .22 rifle or something. He had that gun in the house, and she always sat in a chair right there in the living room. And Uncle Dave was sitting there with that gun, and she was saying, "Son, you oughtn't to be playing with that gun in the house." And he said, "Oh," he pointed at her, and he said, "Oh, Grandma, this gun's not loaded. It won't do anything." He said, "Just watch this." And he pointed it toward the door and squeezed the trigger and shot a hole right through the storm door. But no, Grandma Blanche, she lived there with us when I was young. And now she'd scare me sometimes because she would get to talking to her kids. she'd be in her room. She had a bedroom that was right next door to where Uncle Dave and Uncle Jim and I would sleep, in the next bedroom right beside her. And she'd try to get the kids in bed, and they wouldn't get in bed. And she'd come to the door between our rooms, and her hair would be sticking out in all directions. And she'd say, "Dee, these children just won't listen to me." And it'd scare me to death, you know, because I knew her mind was bad. And but she would have grand mal seizures where she would just like, you know, go completely, you know, the grand mal, the really bad seizures where everything contracts over the whole body and the legs would stick out. And it was very bad. But I was able to deal with that. I would sit and kind of sit on her bed whenever she'd have one of those and sit there and kind of hold her and, you know, try to mollify her. But one thing you could do was just sit there. So when she had physical things like that, I could deal with it. But when her mind would go bad and she'd get to talking to the kids, and that would bother me. But no, that was my association with Grandma Blanche, because her mind was going, as I could, you know, the years I could recall her, because she lost her mind pretty early. Now Grandma Mary, she had a great mind up to the day she died. She lived to be, I think, 92 or something like that. And when I was a kid, Mother and her 4 sisters would come in almost every Sunday up to Grandma Mary and Grandpa Clark's up on Spring Run. And the whole family would come in for dinner. Grandma Blanche, Grandma Mary would cook a big meal, and so I had a lot to do with Grandma Mary. But she was one of those kind of strict grandparents that, you know, you didn't get and jump on her bed or anything like that. It was one of the old-fashioned, more strict grandparent types. It wasn't like hold you on your lap and rock you and, you know, play with you like we do with grandkids nowadays. It was back then, the grandparents, they were like authority figures. And now Grandpa Clark would hold you, and I can remember him lifting me up and hold me up in the air. And but then Grandma Mary, once Grandpa Clark died, then she moved over to Salem and lived in a trailer. And I'd go visit her, and she lived in a trailer right below Aunt Mary and Uncle Hobart, where they lived for a while. So with Grandma Mary, I have a lot of memories. And she was adventurous. I had a stripped down car one time that it was an old Volkswagen, and I'd taken the body off, and all it had was just a flat pan on the bottom and the seats and the steering wheel, and the rod ran out there to a circular thing like that where you could take that steering wheel, and with that thing that went down, you could hand that over to the passenger. They could steer from over there. So it was just a stripped down hot rod, and had the motor back on the back like a Volkswagen. That's what it was, an old Volkswagen. And Grandma Mary would get in and ride with me in that thing. I mean, Grandma Mary was up for sport. But that's about my memories of Grandma Mary and Grandma Blanche. Good women, but not like your Grandma Compton.
Right. No. What about Grandpa Ed and Grandpa Clark? Now you already said Grandpa Ed, you never met him.
No, he died before I was born, I think.
How old was he when he died?
I think he was like in his early 50s, and I think he died of heart problems.
Yeah.
But they said he worked himself to death. And they said he was a very strong man. He was short. He wasn't real tall. Pretty short man, but he was very stout. He worked in the oil fields, and very wise investments. But no, never did know Grandpa Ed.
Yeah, Grandma Compton always said you was going to work yourself to death. Like,
oh yeah, Grandma Compton always said, "Ed, you're not going to live to be 30 years old." Said, "You're running yourself to death." Yeah, Grandma Compton always worried about me. I wasn't eating enough. I was too skinny. And
what about Aunt Tran? Did were you guys as siblings were pretty close? Were you closer to one or the other? Or?
We were all close. We've always been close. Aunt Tran and I don't remember any argument in any shape or form. I mean, she was older and, than me, and so I guess she's 6 years older than I am.
She doesn't look it. She's very mature, though,
yeah.
Like Alicia.
Right. But I don't think Aunt Tran and I ever had any disagreement over anything from the time I was young until today. I mean, we've had a perfect life, perfect relationship. Now Uncle Jim and Uncle Dave and I, we would fight. Uncle Jim would get mad at me and Uncle Dave, and we'd go swimming down the creek, and we'd hold him under the water, and he'd get mad and get to spitting and get mad at us because we'd be putting him under the water and stuff like that. And I remember one time in the house, he got mad at me and Uncle Dave because we were teasing him about something, and he got after me, and I jumped up on the back of the couch to get away from him, and he lunged and hit me like that and shoved me into the drywall and broke the big old crack in the drywall behind the couch. So
Through the wall, basically.
Well, and Uncle Dave would pick on Uncle Jim. One time, Uncle Dave had a BB gun, and he aimed it right at Uncle Jim, and it was a pretty good distance for a shot with a BB gun. But he was down below the house there, and Uncle Jim was standing up next to the house, and I'll never forget it. Uncle Dave went kaping with that BB gun and hit Uncle Jim right there in the arm. And he went, "Oh, David, you shot me!" But yeah, we argued with Uncle Jim quite a bit. Uncle Dave and I, we got along real well. Once in a while, we'd play basketball, and we'd maybe be like Aaron and Jared if we get a little bit upset with the other, might just take the ball and throw it away or something. But Uncle Dave and I have had a good relationship too. Very good. Yeah, we've been close, and like mature things is in our mature lives, like when when Grandma and Grandpa passed and everything had to be transferred and all that. We've never fussed about anything. Whatever one of us has wanted to do, the other one said that's fine. So it's been a real good family relationship.
Yeah, it's can't really find a closer knit group than ours. I mean,
Right.
Uncle Dave is he calls you pretty much every night.
He calls about every night. And I feel guilty sometimes, so I call him once in a while, and I hate to talk on the phone. I hate to talk on the phone, but I know he wants to talk, so I'll call him pretty often. But if I don't call him, he's going to call me, so I'm going to have to talk anyway. But he's a wonderful brother. He's done more for me than anybody could imagine.
Yeah, that's pretty much all I had, Dad. Is there anything that you want to say before we end the video?
No, other than, I'm very grateful for my sons, for you and Aaron and Jared.
We're grateful for you. We've always said that everybody always tries to complain about their childhood is what caused them problems, but we don't have anything to complain about. You and Mom you built us up. You were strict, but I mean, you were never overly strict.
Yeah.
And we were allowed to. I know you wanted our friends to be here.
Yeah.
Because you keep an eye on us.
Oh yeah.
So
I
you
wanted to raise you out here in the country, where you wouldn't be around a lot of bad influences in town.
Yeah, and you were fine if we wanted to have 10, 20 people here.
And your mom never complained either.
No.
She didn't care how many kids came here to visit, play ball, or whatever.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. Yeah, we were glad to have your friends. Yep.
Donnie and Garth practically lived here.
Oh, yeah.
If Mom could keep Garth from drinking up all the milk, I feel like she'd get aggravated.
Oh, shoot.
All right, well.
Okay, well, Brad, thank you for doing the interview.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. We love you very much.
All right, love you, Dad.
Okay, make sure you like, subscribe, and you can check me out at bradctv.com. I forgot to do an intro and an exit.
It's raining about doing that, Brad. You'll melt.